So, Tank recapped after I finished my pitch. 10,000 gallons, give or take. Custom acrylic build. Full reef-capable saltwater life support. Outdoors, in Ohio. Replacing a koi pond your HOA banned. That's the gist, I confirmed nervously. There was a pause. I heard Tank chuckle softly. Mr. Finn, this is, without a doubt, the most gloriously passive-aggressive reason anyone has ever commissioned a 5-figure aquarium from me. I love it. You can do it. Oh, we can do it, Tank assured me. It started subtly, as these things often do. A comment dropped during the annual HOA barbecue. Walter, dear, she'd said, peering towards my backyard. Are you having trouble with algae in that water feature? It looks a trifle green from Mrs. Henderson's patio. Henderson, my immediate neighbor, hadn't said a word, but Periwinkle often used other people's patios as strategic observation posts. Just natural ecosystem stuff, Mildred, I'd replied cheerfully. Keeps the water healthy for the fish. She'd sniffed, unconvinced. And the mosquitoes? With West Nile virus being such a concern. I assured her the moving water from the filter and the fish eating any larvae kept mosquitoes from breeding. She just gave another non-committal, and moved on to critique someone's non-regulation garden gnome. But the seed was planted in her meticulously organized mind. A few weeks later, the first official letter arrived. HOA letterhead, naturally. Dear Mr. Finn, it has come to the attention of the Beautification Committee that the open water feature, pond, located on your property, may not be in compliance with Oak Knoll Estates guidelines regarding landscaping and pest control. It cited Bylaw 29, a vaguely worded section about maintaining yards in a neat and attractive condition, free from pests and stagnant water. It strongly recommended I consult with a professional pond maintenance company to address potential algae blooms and mosquito habitats. I fired back a polite email explaining my filtration system, the fish, the lack of mosquitoes, and attached photos of my clear water and happy koi. I thought that was the end of it. Silly me. 2 months later, another letter. This one sharper. Dear Mr. Finn, despite previous correspondence, resident complaints, I knew exactly which resident, persist regarding the stagnant nature and unsightly appearance of the unapproved water feature on your property. Furthermore, Bylaw 18 explicitly prohibits artificial landscape elements that deviate significantly from the natural surrounding environment without prior ARC approval, which was never sought nor granted for this pond. They were escalating. Now, it wasn't just about mosquitoes, it was an unapproved artificial element. I requested a meeting with the HOA board. The meeting was a masterclass in bureaucratic stonewalling. Me, armed with photos of my beautiful pond, explaining how it was a contained ecosystem, how the fish were thriving, how it added beauty and tranquility. Mrs. Periwinkle sat opposite, flanked by the HOA president, a man whose personality seemed to match his beige blazer, presenting her evidence, blurry photos, allegedly showing mosquito larvae, probably just water striders, printouts of articles about pond maintenance costs, irrelevant, and impassioned testimony about the swampy appearance and potential E. coli risk, utterly baseless. Walter, the president said gravely, after Periwinkle finished her dramatic presentation. The board appreciates your affection for your fish. However, Mrs. Periwinkle raises valid points based on the bylaws. Open, non-chlorinated water features pose inherent risks regarding pests and algae control, and the aesthetic deviation, he sighed. The ruling of the Beautification Committee, supported by the board, is that the pond is non-compliant. It must be drained and filled within 60 days. You may, of course, submit plans to the ARC for an approved chlorinated, self-contained fountain feature if you still desire a water element. I was stunned. Drain it? Fill it in? Destroy my peaceful oasis, my little ecosystem. Because Mildred Periwinkle thought algae was unsightly and imagined mosquitoes were plotting world domination from my lily pads? What about Blanche, Dorothy, Rose, and Sophia? My koi? But the fish, I stammered. Where will they go? Perhaps a local aquarium store would take them, the president suggested unhelpfully. Or a friend with a compliant water feature. Mrs. Periwinkle just smiled, a tight, triumphant little smile. There was no arguing. The decision was final. 60 days. The process of dismantling the pond was heartbreaking. I found a local garden center with a large display pond willing to take the Golden Girls, thankfully. Catching them, transporting them, it felt like betraying old friends. Then came the draining, the removal of rocks and liners, and finally hiring a guy with a bobcat to fill the hole back in with dirt, leaving a sad, muddy scar where my beautiful pond used to be. I stood there, looking at the filled-in hole, feeling empty and furious. Periwinkle had won. The HOA had won. My little slice of zen was gone, replaced by dirt. All because they hated open water, hated algae, hated anything that wasn't perfectly controlled, sterile, and beige. They hate open water? I thought, kicking at a clump of mud. They hate stagnant? They want contained? They want clear? An idea started to flicker, born of grief and rage. Fine. I'll give them contained. I'll give them crystal clear. I'll give them a water feature they can't possibly complain about for those reasons. It wouldn't be a pond. Oh no, it would be something else entirely. My small indoor aquarium suddenly took on new significance. It sat there on its stand in the living room, a cheerful little 55-gallon tank with some neon tetras and a bristlenose pleco cruising around. Filter humming quietly, water crystal clear, mostly. Heater maintaining a perfect 78 degrees. Contained, controlled. No algae blooms visible from the street. No mosquito larvae. No complaints from Mrs. Periwinkle about its swampy aesthetic. What if I just scaled this up, dramatically, put it right where the pond used to be? A massive, unavoidable, undeniably contained aquatic environment. Not a pond, subject to the whims of nature and the HOA's vague bylaws about stagnant water. An aquarium. A backyard aquarium. The idea was nuts, of course. Aquariums belong inside. But the more I thought about it, the more sense it made in its own twisted, spiteful logic. They banned my natural water feature? Fine. I'd give them the most unnatural, high-tech, resource-intensive water feature imaginable. They wanted clear water? I'd give them water filtered to within an inch of its life, illuminated like a Las Vegas casino. They wanted contained? I'd give them thousands of gallons contained behind inches of crystal-clear acrylic. My research phase began with gusto. Forget koi ponds. I was now diving into the world of large-scale public aquariums and monster fish tanks. How big could I go? The old pond was maybe 1,000 gallons. Child's play. I wanted a statement. 5,000 gallons? Still felt inadequate. 10,000 gallons? Now we were talking. Imagine a 10,000-gallon tank, maybe 15 feet long, 5 feet deep, 5 feet wide, sitting right there in the backyard. Unmissable. Glorious. But the technical challenges. Holy smokes. Acrylic or glass? Acrylic is stronger, less likely to shatter catastrophically, lighter, relatively speaking, but scratches easily and can yellow over time. Glass offers perfect clarity but is incredibly heavy, requires thicker panels for that size, and needs impeccable support. The weight alone, 10,000 gallons of water, is over 83,000 pounds, plus the weight of the massive tank itself. This wasn't something you could just plop on the ground. It needed a serious, custom-engineered concrete slab foundation, probably with deep footings. Then life support. Filtration for 10,000 gallons? We're talking massive sump systems hidden underground, powerful pumps running 24/7, protein skimmers that looked like industrial chemical reactors, especially if I dared to go saltwater, which seemed like the ultimate flex, though exponentially more complex and expensive. Giant UV sterilizers to keep the water crystal clear, maybe even ozone generators. Plumbing would look like the inside of a submarine. And temperature control, outdoors, in Ohio. It gets freezing in the winter, scorching in the summer. I'd need powerful submersible heaters for winter, and potentially industrial water chillers for summer to keep the temperature stable for any interesting fish. The electricity bill would probably require its own dedicated power line from the street. What about fish? Koi were out too pond-like. This needed to scream aquarium. Big, impressive freshwater fish seemed most feasible. Maybe some large South American cichlids, Oscars, Jack Dempseys, maybe some impressive catfish. Or go full saltwater? Imagine tangs, angelfish, maybe even small, legal sharks like bamboo sharks or epaulets swimming around back there. The thought was intoxicatingly absurd. Saltwater it is. Go big or go home. Permits? Oh boy. What was this thing legally? It wasn't a pool, no swimming. It wasn't a pond, fully enclosed. It wasn't a standard accessory structure. I'd need permits for the massive foundation, the extensive electrical work, the complex plumbing. Would the city even know how to permit a 10,000-gallon outdoor saltwater aquarium? This could be even worse than the HOA. And the cost. My initial back-of-the-envelope calculations were terrifying. The custom tank itself, the foundation, the commercial-grade filtration, the heaters, the chillers, the lighting, the saltwater mixing equipment, the fish, we were deep into luxury car territory, maybe even small house territory. I presented the preliminary idea, and the horrifying cost estimate, to my wife, Judy. She stared at me, then at the muddy patch in the backyard where the pond used to be, then back at me. "Walter," she said slowly, "I know you're upset about the pond. I am too. But a 10,000-gallon saltwater aquarium? Outside? Are you having some kind of midlife crisis involving fish?" "It's not a crisis, honey," I insisted. "It's a solution. They banned the pond for being stagnant and natural. This is the opposite. It's contained, filtered, controlled. It meets their criteria, just scaled up, and imagine how amazing it will look." "I'm imagining the electric bill, Walter. I'm imagining what happens if 3 inches of acrylic gives way in the middle of the night. I'm imagining Mrs. Periwinkle having a full-blown aneurysm on our lawn." "Exactly," I grinned. "See, you get it." Judy sighed. "Find someone who can actually build this monstrosity. Get a real detailed quote. Then we'll talk. Maybe. After I've had a very stiff drink." Finding the right company took weeks. Local aquarium shops laughed. Pool builders were clueless. Finally, I found Aquascapes Elite online. Their portfolio was insane. Massive reef tanks in hotel lobbies, shark tanks in mansions, complex freshwater biotopes for museums. They seemed like the only ones crazy enough, or skilled enough, for Project Kraken. I called and got put through to a lead designer who introduced himself simply as Tank. His voice was calm, professional, but with an undercurrent of amusement as I explained my vision. "So," Tank recapped after I finished my pitch, 10,000 gallons, give or take, custom acrylic build, full reef-capable saltwater life support, outdoors in Ohio, replacing a koi pond your HOA banned. "That's the gist," I confirmed nervously. There was a pause. I heard Tank chuckle softly. "Mr. Finn, this is, without a doubt, the most gloriously passive-aggressive reason anyone has ever commissioned a 5-figure aquarium from me. I love it." "You can do it?" "Oh, we can do it," Tank assured me. "Engineering the support slab, designing the oversized filtration and temp control for outdoor use, handling the logistics of moving those huge acrylic panels. It's complex, it's expensive, it'll take months. Your neighbors will hate you. Your electric bill will make you cry. But yeah, I could hear the grin in his voice. We can build your crazy backyard ocean. Getting the city permits for the large contained aquatic display, Tank's suggested terminology, was surprisingly slightly easier than anticipated, mostly because nobody at the planning department seemed to know exactly what it was or how to classify it. We submitted detailed plans from Tank's engineers for the foundation, a monstrously thick, heavily reinforced concrete slab designed to support well over 100,000 pounds. We submitted separate electrical permits for the high amperage circuits needed for the pumps, heaters, chillers, and lights. We submitted plumbing permits for the filtration system hookups and drain lines. Because it wasn't a pool, no swimming, and wasn't technically a habitable structure, it seemed to fall into a gray area. After much head-scratching and interdepartmental consultation, they issued the permits for the foundation and utilities, classifying the tank itself vaguely as a specialized landscape feature structure, subject to final inspection. The HOA, when I triumphantly sent them copies, was temporarily flummoxed but promised further review by their lawyers. Then, the real fun began. The backyard became a major construction zone, far exceeding the pond removal mess. First, the excavation for the foundation and the underground sump room, a concrete bunker designed to house the massive filters, pumps, protein skimmer, UV sterilizer, heater, chiller, and auto top-off reservoir. Heavy equipment rumbled, dirt flew. Henderson, Pond Story Henderson, not Volcano Henderson. Wait, no, Periwinkle is the antagonist here. Let's just call the nosy neighbor Henderson for consistency in my head, even if it's Periwinkle in the story. Okay, Mrs. Periwinkle watched from her window like a hawk, probably logging decibel levels of the backhoe. The concrete pour for the slab was epic. Multiple trucks, hours of pouring and smoothing. It looked like I was installing a helipad. While that cured, the electricians and plumbers descended, running thick conduits and large-diameter PVC pipes, transforming the sump bunker into something resembling the engine room of a nuclear submarine. "You sure you're just putting fish in this thing, Walt?" asked Pete the plumber. "Yes, another Pete," surveying the complex network of pipes and valves. "Looks like you're building a Bond villain lair." The most spectacular day was tank arrival day. The custom-built acrylic panels, massive, thick, crystal-clear sheets, some over 15 feet long and 5 feet high, arrived on specialized trucks. Handling them required a large crane parked on the street, blocking traffic, much to the neighborhood's delight, annoyance, and a crew of highly skilled installers from Aquascape's elite, wearing special suction cup lifters. Neighbors gathered on their lawns, phones out, documenting the bizarre spectacle. With agonizing precision, the crane lifted each massive panel over my house and lowered it onto the prepared slab. Tank and his crew worked meticulously, fitting the panels together, applying specialized, incredibly strong bonding agents, ensuring every seam was perfect. A tiny leak in a tank this size would be a catastrophic flood. This assembly process alone took several days. Mrs. Periwinkle was seen conferring darkly with the HOA president on her lawn, both pointing towards my backyard with grim expressions. Once the tank structure was assembled and the bonding agents fully cured, another agonizing wait, the installation of the life support systems began in earnest. Connecting the tank to the sump room via large drilled bulkheads, installing the powerful return pumps, the skimmer, the reactors, the heater/chiller units, wiring up the banks of high-intensity LED lights designed to simulate reef conditions. It was a technological marvel, taking shape where my simple koi pond used to be. The low hum of the powerful pumps became a permanent new feature of my backyard ambiance. Finally, the moment came to add water. Filling 10,000 gallons with garden hoses would take approximately forever and likely trigger immediate water department intervention. I hired a bulk water delivery truck, the kind usually used for filling swimming pools. The driver looked confused. "Filling a pool, buddy?" "Something like that," I yelled over the sound of thousands of gallons of water rushing into the giant acrylic box. "Just more vertical!" It took most of the day. As the water level rose, the sheer scale became even more apparent. It was like a section of the public aquarium had been airlifted into my yard. Then came the salt. Hundreds and hundreds of pounds of marine salt mix, carefully measured and dissolved using submersible pumps. Then began the long process of cycling the tank, establishing the beneficial bacteria colonies needed to handle fish waste. This took weeks of testing water parameters: ammonia, nitrite, nitrate, salinity, alkalinity, calcium. My high school chemistry knowledge came roaring back. Weeks of the tank sitting there, fully lit, water circulating, pumps humming, but completely empty of fish. Weeks of the HOA sending increasingly threatening letters demanding to know what the giant illuminated glass containment unit was for and demanding its immediate removal. Weeks of me politely replying that it was a permitted contained aquatic display undergoing initial setup. At long last, the water parameters were stable. It was time. Fish stocking day. I didn't go too crazy initially, no sharks yet. I opted for a stunning saltwater fish-only with live rock setup. Large, impressive angelfish, emperor, queen, colorful tangs, yellow, hippo, maybe some dramatic triggerfish, schooling bannerfish, and plenty of live rock creating hiding places and biological filtration. I spent a whole Saturday carefully acclimating the new arrivals. That evening, I invited Judy, the kids, home from college for the weekend, and a few close friends over for the official unveiling. I switched on the main LED lights as dusk fell. The effect was breathtaking. The huge tank glowed with an intense blue light, illuminating the entire backyard. The vibrant colors of the large fish swimming amongst the rockwork were mesmerizing. It didn't look like a backyard feature. It looked like a portal to the Great Barrier Reef had opened up next to my patio. "Whoa," breathed my son, Kevin Jr. "Yes, let's keep him consistent." "Dad, that is awesome! Can we get a shark?" "Maybe later, son," I grinned. Judy just shook her head, but she was smiling too. "Okay, Walter, I admit it. It's completely insane, probably bankrupting us, and the HOA is going to declare war, but it is kind of amazing." Right on cue, we saw movement next door. Mrs. Periwinkle's curtains were pulled back. Her silhouette was visible, phone pressed to her ear. The war wasn't coming. It had just arrived. The HOA apocalypse began Monday morning, not with a letter, but with a frantic phone call from Brenda at the management office. "Walter, what have you done?" She practically shrieked into the phone. "Mildred Periwinkle just sent the board a 30-page email with photographic attachments. A giant fish tank? Outside? Lit up like a casino? The board is demanding an emergency meeting and immediate cessation of whatever that thing is." The official notices that followed were works of bureaucratic art, masterpieces of indignant rage translated into legalese. "Cease and desist. Operation and maintenance of unauthorized aquatic structure exceeding permitted size and material specifications. Violation notice. Installation of high-intensity lighting, causing excessive light pollution and neighborhood nuisance. Violation notice. Operation of loud mechanical equipment, pumps, filters, disturbing community peace." The hum was barely audible beyond my property line, but facts were irrelevant now. Demand for immediate removal, entire aquarium structure, foundation, and associated life support systems within 7 days. The threatened fines were now in the national debt category. They cited bylaws I didn't even know existed. Rules about harmonious landscape lighting, maximum decibel levels for pool equipment, even though it wasn't a pool. Prohibition of structures primarily composed of glass or acrylic visible from adjacent properties. They were throwing everything at the wall, or tank in this case, hoping something would stick. Their lawyer sent a formal letter threatening immediate legal action, seeking a court injunction for removal, citing irreparable harm to neighborhood aesthetics, potential catastrophic flood risk, if the tank failed, and the unquantifiable negative impact on property values. Apparently, my stunning slice of the ocean reef was less desirable than Periwinkle's prize-winning beige petunias. Then came the city officials, again clearly spurred by a deluge of complaints from the HOA and likely Periwinkle herself, probably now claiming the fish were plotting escape or sending secret signals with their fins. Code enforcement returned, this time with a supervisor. They looked at the now fully operational fish-stocked aquarium with expressions of profound confusion. "Mr. Finn," the supervisor began, "we need to revisit the classification of this installation. The original permit was for a landscape sculpture with gas appliance." "Wait, that was the volcano story." "Okay, rewind that thought." "The original permit was for a foundation and utilities for a large contained aquatic display. But now that it's this," he gestured vaguely at the glowing tank, "we have questions. Is it a structure subject to standard accessory building setbacks and lot coverage limits? It likely exceeds those. Is it a pool requiring safety fencing? We argued no, as it was fully enclosed. Is the electrical system truly up to code for this kind of high-load outdoor wet environment? The building inspector came back with an electrical specialist. They spent hours going over Sparky Steve's work, the heavy-duty wiring, the GFCI breakers, the weatherproof connections. Thankfully, Steve had been meticulous, anticipating the scrutiny. Electrical passed again, but the structural and classification questions remained. They issued another notice, this one demanding certified engineering plans for the tank structure itself, not just the foundation, proving its stability and safety, and a formal ruling from the zoning board on whether it constituted a permitted accessory use. The bureaucratic gears were grinding, slowly but menacingly. Even the health department made an appearance, thanks to a complaint about potential pathogens and unpleasant odors from a sealed, filtered saltwater tank. Seriously? The inspector looked utterly baffled, took a water sample, which obviously came back clean, reminded me not to discharge salt water into the storm drains during water changes, and left, shaking his head. It felt like I was under siege from every municipal department imaginable, all thanks to my overgrown fish tank and Mrs. Periwinkle's relentless crusade. My lawyer, Dave Miller, was busy. "Okay, Walter," he said during one of our frequent calls. "The city is caught in the middle. They don't want to approve something this weird, but they also don't want to deny something based purely on HOA aesthetic complaints if it technically meets safety codes and doesn't clearly violate zoning definitions. Our best bet is to drown them in paperwork, engineering reports, water quality tests, maybe even an expert opinion from an aquarium curator, proving it's safe, contained, and not technically a building or a pool under their definitions." The HOA, meanwhile, wasn't waiting for the city. They scheduled their emergency meeting, final action regarding hazardous and non-compliant aquatic structure at 112 Oak Street. This was it, the big one. Time to swim with the sharks, the HOA board sharks. The HOA emergency meeting felt less like a neighborhood gathering and more like a tribunal. The clubhouse air was thick with hostility. Mrs. Periwinkle sat bolt upright in the front row, radiating righteous indignation. President Abernathy looked grim. Their lawyer, Mr. Loophole, arranged thick stacks of paper on the table in front of him. I sat with my lawyer, Dave Miller, feeling like a defendant about to be sentenced for crimes against Beige. Mr. Loophole presented the HOA's case with dramatic flair. He painted my aquarium as an ecological disaster waiting to happen, a visual blight, a noisy, light-polluting monstrosity that threatened property values and the very fabric of Oak Knoll estates. He cited bylaw after bylaw, twisting interpretations to fit his narrative. He presented affidavits from Periwinkle and 2 other neighbors detailing the constant humming noise, barely audible, the blinding lights, they were directional LEDs focused into the tank, and the fear of catastrophic tank failure and flooding. He demanded the board authorize immediate, aggressive legal action to compel removal. Then Dave Miller calmly took the floor. He systematically dismantled their arguments. He presented the city permits for the foundation and utilities. He presented the structural engineer's report certifying the foundation's adequacy. He presented Gary the tank's company certifications for the aquarium build quality and safety features. He pointed out the lack of specific HOA bylaws prohibiting contained aquariums versus open ponds. He argued that aesthetic objections were subjective and legally difficult to enforce against a structure with underlying city permits. He highlighted the extensive safety systems. He subtly reminded the board of the potential costs to the HOA of pursuing and likely losing a protracted legal battle, especially one where the homeowner could argue they were simply trying to comply with the spirit of the original pond ruling, that is, contained water. Then I spoke, briefly, trying to sound less like a spiteful homeowner and more like a passionate hobbyist. I talked about the beauty of marine life, the educational value for neighborhood kids, a blatant fabrication, but hey, the tranquility it brought me, which was actually true when I wasn't dealing with lawyers. I emphasized it was a contained system, addressing the very concerns they had about the pond. The board members looked conflicted. They clearly hated the aquarium, but Dave's legal arguments, combined with the city's hesitant stance, gave them pause. After a tense, closed-door deliberation, they came back with a verdict that was less a knockout blow and more a death by 1,000 cuts. No immediate demolition order, for now. They wouldn't file the lawsuit yet, pending final rulings from the city on the structure's classification and safety certification. Massive fines stand and accumulate. They upheld all previously issued fines for aesthetic violations, unapproved structure, etc., and stated they would continue daily until the structure was either removed or somehow gained full RC approval, which would never happen. Strict operational mandates. They passed new emergency rules requiring ARC approval for any outdoor lighting exceeding X lumens, targeting my tank lights, setting specific decibel limits for any outdoor mechanical equipment, targeting my pumps, and requiring submission of monthly water bills to monitor for excessive usage. Screening required. Regardless of city rulings, if the structure remained, I would be required to install dense, HOA-approved landscaping, likely 10-foot arborvitae, to completely screen the aquarium from view from all adjacent properties and the street within 90 days. It was a classic HOA maneuver. Make it so expensive and annoying to keep the offending item that the homeowner eventually gives up. The fines alone would bankrupt me eventually. The screening would cost a fortune and basically wall off my own backyard feature. And the fight with the city over final permits was still looming. I lived with the glowing behemoth and the mounting fines for another few months. It was, I admit, spectacular at night. The fish thrived, Friends loved it. But the constant hum of the pumps, the glare of the HOA letters, the looming legal and financial clouds it started to wear on me. The initial thrill of defiance was fading, replaced by weary resignation. This wasn't the peaceful Zen garden I'd started with. The final straw came with the electric bill after the first month the water chiller had to run constantly during a summer heat wave. It was more than my mortgage payment. With a heavy heart, I called Tank at Aquascapes Elite. "Tank," I sighed, "we need to talk about decommissioning." Tank wasn't surprised. "Figured I might hear from you, Walter. HOA finally wear you down?" "That and the electric company," I admitted. "What's involved in making it go away?" Long story short, dismantling a 10,000-gallon outdoor aquarium is almost as expensive and complicated as building it. We found new homes for the fish. A large local fish store took most of them. Drained the thousands of gallons of salt water, carefully, legally. Hired a different crew with a crane to remove the massive acrylic panels. Sold them at a huge loss to a guy building an indoor shark pond. Hired Gus the builder again to demolish the concrete foundation and sump room and fill the hole. Again. My backyard now boasts a pristine, HOA-approved lawn, perfectly graded, seeded with an HOA-approved fescue blend. No pond, no aquarium, just grass. It cost me an obscene amount of money. First to build the aquarium, then to remove it. Mrs. Periwinkle sometimes gives me a tight, triumphant little smile when she sees me mowing. I just nod politely. Was it worth it? Absolutely not. It was a financial disaster, a logistical nightmare, and a source of incredible stress. I didn't win. The HOA, through sheer bureaucratic inertia and financial pressure, ultimately got their way. My backyard is bland and featureless again, but for a few glorious months I had a 10,000-gallon saltwater reef tank in my suburban Ohio backyard. I had emperor angelfish swimming where koi used to be. I had neighbors gathering to watch the lights come on. And Mrs. Periwinkle? For a while there, she wasn't complaining about algae or mosquitoes. She was complaining about a giant glowing box full of exotic fish that cost more than her car. And sometimes late at night, when I look out at my perfectly boring HOA-compliant lawn, I can almost see the ghost of that blue light, hear the hum of the pumps, and see Blanche the koi swimming happily. Or maybe it was a yellow tang. Either way, they definitely couldn't complain it was stagnant water.